Welcome to London Property Digest, your essential 10-minute audio recap for staying informed on London's property market. Buckle up, because today we're diving into a scenario that sounds straight out of a real estate thriller. What happens when a country slaps a 100% tax on buying property?
Sounds wild, right? But that's exactly what Spain's prime minister is proposing for non-EU residents.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Spain's housing market, especially in those sun-kissed coastal cities, has been a magnet for foreign buyers for years. But it's also created a bit of a dilemma.
Exactly. While foreign investment has been a boon in many ways, it's also driven up prices, making it harder for locals to afford a place of their own. It's a story we've seen play out in many desirable locations, including, of course, London.
So Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez is taking a pretty drastic approach. He wants to cool down the market and make housing more accessible for Spaniards by essentially making it prohibitively expensive for non-EU residents to buy property.
The proposed tax would add a 100% levy on top of the existing property taxes, which already range from 7% to 12%, depending on the region. That means if you're a non-EU citizen looking to buy a Spanish villa, you could be looking at a total tax bill well over 100% of the property's value.
Wow. That's a hefty premium. Sánchez is framing this as a way to combat speculation and prevent a growing divide between rich landlords and poor tenants. But let's be honest, it's a move that's sending shockwaves through the international property market.
Absolutely. And it's raising a lot of questions. Is this a genuine attempt to solve a complex problem, or is it more about political posturing? Will it actually curb foreign investment, or will it simply push buyers towards other markets?
And speaking of other markets, this news out of Spain is making London's recent non-dom tax changes seem almost tame in comparison, right?
You could say that. While some Londoners might have been grumbling about those non-dom updates, suddenly a 100% tax puts things into a whole new perspective. It really highlights how governments around the world are grappling with the same fundamental issue of housing affordability, but are choosing very different paths to address it. It's certainly a wake-up call. But let's shift our focus back to London for a moment. You mentioned the non-dom tax changes. For those who haven't been following every detail of London's tax policies, could you give us a quick breakdown?
You got it. Non-dom stands for non-domiciled. And it applies to people who live in the UK but consider their permanent residence or domicile to be outside the UK. It's a status that's attracted wealthy individuals and investors to London for decades.
And the key perk of this status was that they didn't have to pay UK tax on their foreign earnings, right?
Oh, exactly. But the rules have changed recently. Now, after residing in the UK for a certain number of years, these individuals become deemed domiciled for tax purposes. This means they're liable for UK taxes on all their income, no matter where it's earned.
So no more enjoying London's lifestyle without contributing to the UK tax system. I imagine that's caused some ripples in the luxury property market.
You bet. Some analysts predicted a mass exodus of wealthy non-doms, leading to a drop in those high-end property prices. You know, the kind of places most of us only dream about.
It was a tempting narrative, but the reality is more nuanced. While some non-doms have indeed chosen to relocate, others have decided to stay put and embrace their new tax obligations. London, after all, offers a unique blend of cultural attractions, financial opportunities, and global connections that's hard to replicate elsewhere.
So no fire sale on mansions just yet?
Not exactly. London's property market, especially at the higher end, is incredibly resilient and influenced by a complex interplay of factors. Global investment, limited supply, and the city's enduring appeal all contribute to its stability.
Makes sense. The non-dom changes might have been a nudge, but they haven't fundamentally reshaped the market, especially when you consider that Spain's potential 100% tax could drastically impact foreign investment, making London seem like a safe haven in comparison.
Indeed. London's approach seems more like a fine-tuning of the system, while Spain is proposing a major overhaul. It'll be fascinating to see how these contrasting approaches play out in the long run.
Absolutely, but let's bring it back down to earth for a moment. What does all this high-level tax talk mean for the average Londoner who's just trying to find a decent place to live? Does any of this actually trickle down and affect affordability? That's the million-pound question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to draw a direct line from these big-picture policies to what someone might pay for a flat in their neighborhood.
It's true. The link between tax policies and housing affordability is rarely straightforward. It's more about understanding the broader forces at play, the ripples that spread out from these decisions. What happens in Spain, for example, might not immediately impact the price of a two-bedroom flat in London, but it could influence investor sentiment shift, global capital flows, and ultimately contribute to the overall market dynamics.
So it's like a giant interconnected web. Something tugs on one strand and you feel it across the entire network.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to stay informed, to keep an eye on what's happening both locally and globally. Don't just focus on the headlines about rising interest rates or new developments in your borough. Pay attention to those seemingly far-off policy decisions, like Spain's proposed tax, because they can offer valuable insights into the bigger picture.
So what's the takeaway for our listeners? What's the one thing they should keep in mind as they navigate the London property market?
The key takeaway is that the property market is rarely static. It's constantly evolving, responding to a multitude of factors. Staying ahead of the curve requires understanding these forces, both the local and the global. By keeping your finger on the pulse of international developments, economic trends, and even those political maneuvers, you can make more informed decisions, whether you're buying, selling, or simply trying to make sense of this ever-changing landscape.
So the next time you hear about some dramatic property shakeup in another country, don't just dismiss it. Think about those domino effects, how it might ripple across borders and eventually reach London's shores.
Precisely. Keep asking yourself those crucial questions. Could this impact London? Could it shift the balance of power in the global property game? Because in today's interconnected world, what happens in Madrid could very well have consequences in Mayfair.
Well, I think that's a brilliant note to end on. Always remember, knowledge is power, especially in the dynamic world of property.
Couldn't agree more.
And that's a wrap on this edition of London Property Digest. Subscribe to London Property Digest for the latest updates on the London property market. Until next time, happy investing.